She's the new leader of the United Nations General Assembly, and he is bringing change to UN peacekeeping operations. We speak to two UN leaders about reform, responsibility, and the role of the organization. Hello, I'm Anand Naidoo at UN headquarters in New York with this special edition of The Heat. She's only the fourth woman to be elected president of the United Nations General Assembly and the first from Latin America. Earlier, I spoke to Maria Fernanda Espinosa about her priorities for the 73rd General Assembly and how gender plays a role. Madam President, thank you very much for joining us. You've just assumed office as the UN General Assembly president. It's a very important time because you were the first woman from Latin America to take this office. You're also only the fourth woman in the history of the UN to hold this office. What are your plans for your time in office?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Anand. I think that it's both, a big, I feel very happy, but very honored, but at the same time, it's very huge challenge because people expect more from women in general. We have to show that we are fit for purpose, that we can actually do it. And I think these are, as you very well mentioned, these are very challenging times. I think we need to prove that multilateralism is the only way that we have, the only mechanism, the only tool that we have to address and solve global challenges and global problems.
You talk about challenges. What are your priorities?
So I have chosen 7 priorities for my year of presidency. These 7 priorities have also a message embedded in it. We have to deliver 7 days a week for the people in need. The first priority, of course, is gender equality. I cannot do otherwise. We are going to be working on the economic empowerment of women and the access to decent work for women, equal jobs, equal pay campaign. We are going to be working on women in politics, the political empowerment of women. The second priority is about migration and refugees, using the momentum of a global compact on migration and also the upcoming summit in Marrakesh, Morocco, where we will adopt the global compact on migration. But more importantly, next year is going to be the implementation year for the global compact. So we will devote quality time to refugees and migration. The third priority is about the rights of persons with disabilities on 2 main areas: accessibility, but also access to decent work. Persons with disabilities face this enormous challenge of being able to contribute to society, to the economy of their respective countries. So we are going to push for that, for accessibility, but also to universalize the convention on the UN Convention on Persons with Disabilities. We're very, very close. There are only a few countries that we need them to just sign on to the convention. The fourth priority is going to be about environmental action, basically with 2 main clusters. One is going to be on climate change, of course, 3 years after the Paris Agreement, the preparation for the upcoming summit on climate change in September next year, but also an international campaign. And the media have a very, very important role to play. An international campaign against plastics. We know that plastics is one of the main sources of pollution for our seas and oceans, and this is going to be, we will give a strong push to combat plastics. The fifth priority is about revitalizing the United Nations. It's extremely important. This revitalization, renewal process has basically 3 elements. One is about implementing the reform of the UN, which is ongoing, but requires implementation next year. Second issue is revitalizing the General Assembly. There is a negotiation process that is ongoing, and we need to just give a political push to the revitalization process. And thirdly, the reform of the Security Council. This is an ongoing issue, a pending issue. It's been on the agenda for 25 years, and I hope that this year we will have some progress on that. The last priority is on peace and security, but with a focus on prevention and the role of youth. We are going to be working strongly to push for the access of youth to political participation, to have their own voice, but also access to decent jobs by the youth. We think that this is the most powerful preventive tool to prevent young people to get into violent extremism activities. So these are, I think that I have covered the 7 priorities, so it's going to be, you know, a very intense agenda next year.
Talk to us about gender equality. You know, this comes at a very critical time, and we know that from what we read in the newspapers, what we see on television every day right now. We have the Me Too movement, which has grown right here in the United States. You are planning to empower women politically to seek gender equality. How are you going to go about that?
The General Assembly is going to be used as, you know, a platform, as a world microphone, to just have women leaders coming here, speaking to their peers in all parts of the world to say, yes, we can. Yes, and the spaces we have now as decision-making platforms, as decision-making spaces, is that because we have fought for that and we deserve to be where we are. So we are going to organize this big event, but we will make sure that during the entire work, the daily life of the General Assembly, we will have, for example, gender parity in panels, gender parity in all the activities, events that are sponsored by the General Assembly, and making sure that all the United Nations architecture operates in the same way. I have a big partner for this, which is the Secretary General. He's a feminist Secretary General, and we will be working hand in hand with him and with all member states that are fully committed to the issue as well.
You know, you're taking office at a time when the world is in change. You know, you talked earlier on of multilateralism, but yet we see in many parts of the world countries becoming nationalist, withdrawing into their own borders. Some people call it populism. We see that in Europe. We see that to a certain extent here in the United States. How big a challenge is that?
Well, you know, I keep hearing that multilateralism is under threat, that the United Nations has weakened its impact. And the truth is that we will receive more than 120 heads of state and government that are coming to New York to have a discussion, a dialogue, to communicate with their peers, to communicate with their countries and their people using the General Assembly as their platform. We have hundreds of ministers coming during High-Level Week to talk about tuberculosis, about non-communicable diseases, to discuss about peace and security issues, to discuss about climate change and migration. This means that this organization remains as the most relevant and important multilateral organization. It doesn't mean, however, that we don't need to do better and more. The doing better and more, it's part of the purpose and the objective of my presidency. I have even come up with an acronym, the DARE acronym, the Dare to Change, Dare to Do Things Better, Dare to Be More Efficient. DARE is about delivery, accountability, relevance, and efficiency. So this is going to frame the work of my presidency.
Talking about delivery, you are President of the General Assembly. Of course, you have the Office of the Secretary General. There's the Secretariat, the International Secretariat here. What's the process that this organization goes through to implement a kind of program that you're talking about?
So basically, the General Assembly is the parliament. Is the parliament of humanity, is the norm-setting body of the United Nations, is the body where the 193 states are represented, either big or small. They have the same seat, the same button to vote and to speak, and they're all equal, and every vote has the same value. So that's the Parliament of Humanity. So I am president of this Parliament of the world, in a way. And the Secretariat has to implement the decisions that are taken by member states.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm just trying to figure out how much of a challenge it would be for you to navigate this bureaucracy.
Well, it's hard. Every bureaucracy around the world. I'm a bureaucrat myself. I'm a public servant. So I think that the big challenge is to, I tell this to my team and my colleagues. Every day when we have to take decisions, when we have to deliver, when we have to produce a report, write a document, or vote, or give an opinion, we have to think about the people that are in need, the people we represent. Sometimes we become very self-referential. We talk to each other and we talk with acronyms in a very bureaucratic language. And part of the challenge is not to deliver more and better, but also to communicate properly, to make people understand that that the United Nations can really touch their lives and transform the way they live and improve their livelihoods.
But sometimes you have countries that have their own interests, their own national interests. We see that in the United States. The United States pulled out of the Paris Accord on climate change. It's on your program. How big a blow was that to that program?
Well, I think it's extremely important that this House embraces diversity of opinions, diversity of positions. I think that every member state is entitled to say or to have views on certain issues that perhaps may differ from others. But that's why the multilateral system is so relevant. It's because it can bring together even dissent and process dissent in a democratic way. The democratic way is through voting. And sometimes, a simple majority can make the difference. In the case of climate change, as you just mentioned, it is very encouraging to see, for example, that in this country, in the United States, there are so many states. This is a federal system. States that are fully committed to the Paris Agreement. California, for example, is one that is following the path of the commitments to reduce CO2 emissions. And they are committing, and more states of this big federation are committing to delivering on the Paris Agreement, and that's very encouraging.
One final point, and that is you talked about reform of the United Nations. That's the very organization where we are sitting right now. What do you believe is wrong, and how will you fix that?
Well, the reform process was proposed by the Secretary General on 3 pillars. He's proposing a new architecture of the peace and security apparatus to be able to reach better the ground and with a spirit of subsidiarity and greater efficiency. The second component of the reform is the management reform, to be more efficient, to use better the regional bodies and mechanisms of the organization, to reach better the final beneficiaries of the system, and also the suggestion of a new development system, a new development architecture. So this is an ongoing process. We expect that we will finalize the negotiation process as soon as possible. This depends very much on member states. I will push hard on that, and let's hope that next year is going to be the implementation and delivery year for the reform. The message for the public opinion, for the citizen of the world, is that the United Nations is reinventing itself to deliver better for them, for the people that we're here for.
Madam President, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we speak with the head of UN peacekeeping operations. Stay with us for more on this special edition of The Heat.